Still we used to say ni Friday imefika, ni weekend imefika.
Ni weekend imefika. Tunaenda kujirusha.
That is your cue that this definitely is that particular one place that we start strongly on a Friday, queuing your weekend, kwa nguvu, because we'll be giving you, serving you some good vibes, and inshallah we'll be having, a DJ right here at the end of the tail end of the show. We'll be having today. We're not having Bansi, we're having Kashambi.
Oh,
yes.
Okay, something to look forward to.
Oh, yes, we're having Gashambi. Just to take a look at what has been happening.
That's a new weekend queue, eh?
Oh, yes.
Gashambi.
We'll be spicing it up. So it's a new year. Definitely have to spice it up.
It will be her first time on Morning Cafe, at least this time round. In the new year. New year, new stuff.
New year, new stuff, most definitely. But then, let's take a look at some highlights of what to expect on our dailies.
Yes, and I know you're going to do your thingy-majiggy with a touch screen, but yes, we can start off with what we have. And quick look at the dailies this morning on the Star. Facelift for 117-year-old State House. So State House has apparently been closed down for renovations for about 2 months. So that's a big headline on the Standard. And we'll be looking at that later on. What, do you have The Nation?
I do have The Nation right here with me. Junior secondary in trouble again. And this is a conversation that we've been having. Our first highlight on Monday was this, matters junior secondary. Yes. And the threat by, the senior interns, threatening to actually down their tools, and they actually did.
Well, yes, and we'll be looking at that with a team of analysts later on. On Taifa Leo, Ruto abomoa nyumba ya Uhuru. I think this is the most interesting headline this morning. Ruto abomoa nyumba ya Uhuru. We'll be telling you a lot more about that later on. Let's take a look at another daily this morning, and we have the Star. On the Star, okay, the People Daily has popped up, but let's look at the Star. 85 billion shillings penalties, how hefty awards drain state coffers. Wow, 85 billion. Can you even wrap your mind around that kind of figure? On the People Daily, scheme to kick out 10 judges. This is the top strip you're looking at, much lower. I think on the middle of the page, that's where the main highlight is. A scheme to kick out 10 judges. Remember, there's also that LSK protest later on. I'll be telling you a lot more about that. Oh, yes. And finally, in Business Daily, U.S. firms enjoy billions in savings from Ruto tax cut. These are just the local dailies. We'll bring you, of course, what's headlining across the border later on. But first, let's take a look at the highlights.
Oh, yes. But then before the highlights this particular morning, we can definitely take a look at the weather this particular morning. Yesterday, you remember me telling you that there were chances of it raining in the evening quite high, and it actually did. So this particular morning, you're probably thinking about carrying your umbrella this particular morning, but hey, don't do that. Because we are being informed that, the precipitation of this particular morning, about 0% of it. And there you have it. Now it's about 16 degrees Celsius, and but then the temperatures are likely to increase. Even the weather knows it's getting into Friday, getting into
interesting
weekend.
You're telling people not to carry the umbrellas. You never know.
Don't. But then when it reaches around, in the evening, chances of it actually raining between 1 p.m. there and around 2 p.m. are quite high, and getting even into the evening, chances of it actually raining into the night are actually quite high. That is the weather right about now. We'll be taking a look at more of these particular papers, and even across the borders later on, Fred.
Okay, no traffic today?
We'll be, it's a Friday, so tutambia watu traffic later on. Malizia pale.
All right, let's take a look at the highlights then. And our first highlight today,
Law Society to lead its members in demos to protest President William Ruto's assault on the judiciary, with the LSK leadership threatening impeachment.
In regional news, Burundi closes its borders with Rwanda after accusing its neighbor of being a bad neighbor and funding rebel attacks after 20 people were killed near the border with DRC.
And across the continent, US and UK militaries launch strikes against multiple Iran-backed militant group Houthi targets in Yemen following repeated drone and missile attacks on commercial ships in the Red Sea.
Yes, to the top story now. The Law Society has confirmed plans to hold a peaceful street protest today against President William Ruto's attacks on the judiciary. In a notice shared on social media, LSK invited members of the public to join the members of the legal community in calling out President Ruto for his utterances, which they insist amount to an attack on the independence of the third arm of government. LSK says a peaceful protest and march will start from the Supreme Court grounds in Nairobi, proceeding along Parliament Road to the office of the President. The Secretariat has already written to the police commandant in Nairobi area requesting security during the exercise scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. and conclude at noon.
Right, and that particular bit and top story also forms a news diary this particular morning. The Law Society of Kenya has planned nationwide protests and, urging its members to don purple ribbons in solidarity. So according to the LSK, this is to reaffirm their commitment to defend the independence of the judiciary and compliance with court orders. Correspondents across the country are on this particular bit and will be informing you on how this will be unfolding. Remember last week, Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka said that he supports this particular protest, and also, a couple of other leaders from the opposition. This is going to form one of our top stories on our bulletins this particular day. From that, and still on matters judiciary, the Chief Justice, Martha Koome, will today preside over the official handover by Chief Registrar Anne Amadi after a decade of distinguished service at the judiciary. The event will be held at Milimani Law Courts building starting at around 10:15 a.m. Let's get into some matters sports today. Matters rugby in Dubai, or as people commonly say, Ndumberi. Shujaa, that is the men's team, and the Lionesses will begin the hunt for tries today at the Seven Stadium in Dubai for the Challenger Series, which is captained by Tony Omondi, and will be playing Mexico and Uganda today. Minol Lionesses, which is captained by Grace Okulu, will face China and later on take on Czech Republic. On our international diary this morning, in Nigeria, the final judgment of the Kano State governorship election case will be delivered by the Nigeria Supreme Court today. The cases involves Governor Abba Yusuf of the New Nigeria People's Party and Dr. Nasiru Gawuna of the All Progressive Congress. Let's take a look at also a bit on today in history. Back in 2010, a day like today, it was a sad day for people in Haiti. Fred, you remember back then, a 7.0 magnitude earthquake struck that particular country, and it left about 220,000 people dead.
Wow.
Today is one of those days that Haiti will be commemorating that particular day. Oh, yes.
Interesting.
That is today in history. You can get back and dive on the dailies, not only in Kenya, but across the board.
As you were talking, I already went through the Standard and I was looking at the Pulse magazine. Okay, fine. Away from the very interesting photo of the model on the front page.
Pampered paupers.
The big discussion there is about pampered paupers, how celebrities glorify begging. And he talks about the new culture, the new trend where celebrities have started begging people for contributions or fundraising on social media, especially X. And yet this kind of money, initially they talk about them being in distress, but then they're actually begging for money to buy luxuries, vehicles and stuff like that. Yes. Anyway, that's a Pulse. Let's come back to the front page of the Standard. And yes, State House closed for renovation, a facelift for 117-year-old State House. For the next 2 months, President William Ruto will be shuttling between various state houses and state lodges as a century-old State House in Nairobi undergoes extensive renovations, following an assessment by engineers that the expansive colonial-era structure was increasingly becoming unfit for habitation. It explains why the president has been in Eldoret and Nakuru. Actually, right now he's still living. He's still living in the Nakuru State Lodge, State House. And since the year started, I don't think he's been at State House Nairobi.
Oh, yes.
This big imposing building, kumbe in a vuja maji.
Wow.
Wow, interesting story there on this 117-year-old, very iconic building in Nairobi. We call it the House on the Hill.
Oh, yes.
Still on the front page of the Standard, cracks in Azimio as leaders train their guns on Kalonzo. Politics there. Well, we've been struggling to get serious political stories this whole year. But yes, a supremacy battle is brewing in the opposition coalition after NARC Kenya party leader Martha Karua and Jubilee Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni hit out at Wiper leader over his remarks on a new Mount Kenya lobby group. That story is on page 8. Elsewhere, Ruto Raila talks report set for implementation. This story went quiet. But the House Minority Leader Opiyo Andai now says National Dialogue report set for adoption by Parliament ahead of implementation. Finally, we come to the issue of education, which has been our biggest, our pet topic this entire week. Puzzle of schools where students scored grade D. That story is on page 3. And of course, starting tomorrow, the big tournament, AFCON Cup of Nations 2023, the A to Z. And that story is on page 35. Yes, if you look at page 35, it has the lowdowns of the A to Z of Africa Cup of Nations 2023 being played in 2024. They're starting tomorrow in Ivory Coast. And yes, on the back page, Sancho finds escape route from Man United freezer. Stories of the transfer window that ends at the end of this month. And that's the Standard this Friday.
Oh, yes. Let's get into the Daily Nation, matters education, forming the big headline. This morning, the Sage Junior Secondary in trouble again. Education stating a race against time to build new classrooms for grade 9 next year. And one of the troubles, number one, staffing crisis. Schools facing a massive teacher shortage with TSC putting number at a high of 42,000. And syllabus woes, rationalization of learning areas led to reduction in subjects, but the textbooks aren't ready. And sibling rivalry. Interns on contract who earn less feel they're superior to their primary school counterparts. More is on page 6. And on the bottom scroll, matters politics here. Raila plans consultative meetings across the country. And Ruto meets Jubilee MCAs, and that particular photo there of President William Ruto flanked by his deputy Rigathi Gachagua, as well as UDA Sakjan there, chatting with the Jubilee MCAs and members of the party's National Executive Council at State House in Nakuru, or rather Nakuru State House. The more than 100 Jubilee ward representatives were accompanied by acting party leader and nominated MP Sabina Chege and ELA MP Kanini Kega. Other stories on the right side, matters courts there. Matters crime suspected serial killer to be held for 14 days. Detectives will detain John Matara, the suspected serial killer and prime suspect in the murder of Starlet Ohu, 26 for 14 more days in order to complete investigations. More is on page 3. And a story that is extensive on the back page. MPs to defy court, hold hearings on housing bill. Parliament is next week set to embark on public hearings for the Affordable Housing Bill 2023, which seeks to provide a comprehensive legal framework for the implementation of the government's housing plan. And at the very top scroll, a peek into the thrilling but risky life of a bouncer. The common in political events and nightclubs on pages 2 and 3. And another bit there, principals face probe over withheld results, examinations cancelled. TSC, someone head teachers on page 7. On the back page, other stories making it to there, apart from that particular story on House to defy order, hold hearings on housing bill. At the very top scroll, matters sports, government challenge to improve security in areas where athletes train and reside, as slain Ugandan runner buried in Trans Nzoia. Was on page 38.
All right. Tuangazie gazeti la Taifa Leo. Ruto abomoa nyumba ya Uhuru. You contrast that one with what's happening on the front page of the Standard. He doesn't have a house in Nairobi. It's been closed down for renovations. But Ruto abomoa nyumba ya Uhuru. Rais akutana na madiwani 120 waasi wa Jubilee na kuwahimiza waonge serikali yake huku wakimwasi Kenyatta. Hiyo ndio habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Habari zaidi kwenye ukurasa wa mbele pale chini. Masuala ya spoti. Arsenal sasa yamtafuta star Mayoral. Ripoti yasema ofa ya shilingi bilioni 4.5 ya the Gunners imekataliwa na klabu ya Getafe. Kwingineko, nilimdunga tu mguuni ya Dai Matara. Mshukiwa wa mauaji ya dada wa Pasta Kanyari asema anayojua kuhusu kifo cha Starlet. Na kwenye siasa, Raila aelekea mashinani kukabili Ruto. Tuangazie upande wa juu wa ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Vidokezo zaidi. Uuzaji wa barua za kidato cha kwanza. Mbunge ataka walimu wahusika wachukuliwe hatua. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa 5. Na masuala ya siasa, tukizingatia maeneo ya Mlima Kenya. Nyoro atosha kwa urais wa mwaka 2032. Viongozi wa Mlima Kenya wamuidhinisha Nyoro amrithi Ruto badala ya Gachagua. Hizo ndizo habari zilizopewa kipaumbele kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo.
All right, let's talk money matters now. And on the Business Daily, this particular morning, US firms enjoy billions in savings from Ruto tax cut. And talk about Ormat ATC declose benefits from 30% corporate tax. And reports come amid a backlash of a new tax locally. They give a particular graph there, or power for revenues from KPLC. Other stories making it to this particular story on the bottom scroll there, you do have it, matters commodities, traded coffee volumes, prices rebound on fresh crop. And on the right, this particular ticker here gives us a brief on particulars, economy, matters economy and companies. The first one on page 5, Treasury eases farms' headaches over e-TIMS. So e-TIMS is basically the electronic invoice tax management systems, and businesses with difficulties in complying with the current configuration of the electronic invoice tax management systems, or rather e-TIMS, now have an opportunity to tailor-make an alternative system which fits their special needs. Another bit on matters economy is Christmas, New Year, shopping fails to lift jobs, sales. And companies sustain job cuts into December as a response to reduced sales. An analysis on Stanbic's Bank Kenya's Purchasing Managers Index suggests pointing to a gloomy festive period for families. Matters companies, Coca-Cola bottler 6-10 months for new bottle labels. Interesting. I mean, over the years, they have really had that particular consistency when it comes to even how they label, their bottles. As a creative, what would you like to see on a Coca-Cola bottle?
Oh, I mean, I just like the design.
As it is.
That wave,
It reminds me back then, you'd really tell, ukirusha ndoano, you tell someone's daughter.
Kama chupa ya Coca-Cola.
Oh, yes,
okay.
That particular figure. A final bit there on that particular scroll. Matters intelligence. Russia-Ukraine war is likely to postpone addressing a resolution on the worsening Africa's sovereign debt problem. And that is the Business Daily this morning. Okay,
on the Star, they talk about the bills that the government is accruing, especially from court fines. 85 billion shilling penalties. How hefty awards drain state coffers. They call it a costly waste. Bills from court cases have grown by 16 billion shillings in 1 year alone. Wow. This is the cost of taking the government to court. They're mainly as a result of procurement blunders by bureaucrats. That story has been covered extensively on pages 4 and 5 of the Star. A very interesting photo down there on the front page of the Star. Smiling Boda hard at work, heedless of overloading danger, and two Boda operators carrying at least 3 billion passengers on their bodas, and none of them has any kind of protection. No helmet, nothing. Very interesting state of affairs. Other highlights on the front page of the Star: Raila's 30-day ODM blitz amid threat of demos, and elsewhere, why the sick are dying in hospitals awaiting therapy. That's a Star today.
Let's take a look at the People Daily, and they focus on matters, the corridors of justice. This says scheme to kick out 10 judges. And there's a quote there by the President of the Judiciary, Chief Justice Martha Koome. And she says, attacking judges and judicial officers who made a decision in public undermines all the values of a constitutional order. Such attacks or comments when made on matters which are pending before any court also violate the sub judice imperative, which is a rule of law. And there's also on pages 4 and 5, they say tough wars. New onslaught by Kenya Kwanza insiders targets members of the bench seen to be obstructing president's political agenda. And just a reminder to you, the Law Society of Kenya will be holding the nationwide protests today. We'll be taking a look at which particular counties will be active on this, on the same. Other highlights on the People Daily: matters politics, Ruto in campaign to lure Jubilee rebels. At the very top scroll, pain as Mero sisters to be buried on the same day. A highlight on sports: matters AFCON. Senegal confident of defending title as AFCON kicks off in Ivory Coast. Now the countdown is in hours right now.
Oh yeah, something to look forward to starting this weekend. Let's now cross the borders and take a look at what's the kind of big news making headlines in our neighboring countries. And we have one daily from Uganda before we take a look at the several that we have from Tanzania. Let's start off with Uganda. The Daily Monitor this morning, headlines: Save me from trial, Kitutu asks Museveni. And this has to do with some distribution of iron sheets by the government, and quite a number of them. A batch of up to 11,000 iron sheets disappeared from the office of the Prime Minister's stores in Namnamve. And that's a big headline. They're calling it the iron sheet scandal in Kampala, Uganda.
All right, let's cross over to Tanzania and take a look at the Citizen, and just to have a couple of the top highlights. Why New Dat Chief has his hands full is the top story. And just a context of this, the newly appointed Dar es Salaam Rapid Transit Agency Chief Executive, Mr. Athumani Kihamia, has a lot on his plate in the form of unfinished work that needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency to meet public expectations. And another interesting highlight that also affects Kenya: ELA rules set for major review. ELA is the East African Legislative Assembly, intends to review its rules of procedure following the expansion of the ESC, which now comprises 8 member states. And that is the Citizen this particular morning.
Tuangazie gazeti la Mwananchi, habari kuu pale: siku 14 ngumu, Daktari Ndumbaro akisaka ndege, asimulia masaibu yaliyomkumba alipoongoza msafara kuirejesha ndege ya ATCL iliyokuwa imezuiwa Afrika Kusini. Asema hicho ndicho kipindi kigumu zaidi katika maisha yake ya uwaziri. Remember, this plane had been held in South Africa because of some debt. And I think this is a gentleman who was sent to try and retrieve it and return it to Tanzania. And he says it was 14 days of hell.
All right.
Today we have quite a number of dailies from Tanzania.
Let's take a look at The Guardian and two of their top highlights. The first one: Zanzibar records 56.4% rise in revenues in 2 years. And another one: 27 NGOs propose articles on voter education and observation. That is The Guardian this morning.
And finally, tuangazie gazeti la Habari Leo, gwiji la habari Tanzania. Habari kuu pale: miaka 60 ya mapinduzi ya kujivunia. Masuala ya miaka 60. Yeah, I think generally they're also marking 60 years of independence or thereabout. Miaka 60 ya mapinduzi ya kujivunia. Hiyo ndio habari iliyopewa kipaumbele kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Habari Leo. Turejee nyumbani tuangazie masuala ya karakacha.
But even as we're doing that now is in Zanzibar and not in Tanzania.
Zanzi.
On page 16 of the Standard is where we have today's caricature. It's an interesting bit there. That particular advice by Kenya Wildlife Service saying, if you see, in case you're seeing a hyena, just talk to it. And they had a list of, what to do when you see a hyena. So they say, in case of an encounter with a hyena, don't show fear. Instead, keep yourself calm by talking to it. And there's a gentleman there saying, Bwana Fisi, how are you? Hii Rutonomics, inakupelekaje? Are you hungry?
I think that's one of the funniest ever advisories offered by a government institution. That when you see a hyena, you talk to it.
Oh,
well, probably it does make sense. I don't know. Anyway, the cartoon on the Daily Nation, page 18, also has an animal, but this one is a cow that is being milked dry. And the bucket is a CDF. And the Houses of Parliament demanding that pay up or we impeach you. And this is directed at the CS Treasury. And the CS is crying and asking this cow to actually produce more milk just to fill up the CDF buckets. Matters to do with the kind of ultimatum given to the CS Treasury by members of the National Assembly in as far as disbursement of their CDF kitty. All right, those are the cartoons. Do we have the People Daily?
Oh, yes, for the People Daily this particular morning, there is on the screens an SSF Act.
Another animal.
Another animal this particular morning. An SSF Act 2013 and other deductions. And this particular animal this particular morning is a shark. And this shark is the high cost of living. And there's a common mwananchi there trying to escape the sharp teeth of the shark. And this is actually going to be a reality come next month, on the February 13th. This will be marking 2 years after the whole, NSSF, rulings were made and all that. So it is going to be, this also formed headlines yesterday, or yesterday's papers. There's a possibility that the NSSF deductions that, are on the payslip might be actually adding up. So probably, unangojea salary the payslip here January, but then February's might actually...
The payslip is shrinking.
Oh, yes. This is another animal.
All right. Today being Friday, we'll be having the youth perspective on state of the nation. To stand by for that, we'll be having in studio John Mukoya, Kijana Steve Nderi, Angel Mbuthia, and Vincent Olengo. Do stand by for this. This entire week we've been talking about matters education with the KCSE results, issues to do with the CBC, JSS, and other issues around education. And we'll be trying to get the youth perspective on that. You can be part of this conversation as well through our social media, on X at TV47 News and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. And also, later on, do stand by for that very interesting music treat.
Oh, yes.
From a family of five.
A family of five singing. It's going to be interesting to, interact with them and see who inspired who to get into this particular bit of it.
Yes, definitely the best way to kickstart your weekend. You're watching Morning Cafe. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV47 with me, Fred Ndemuli. Well, I want to take a look at the state of the nation. Today being Friday, we get the youth perspective. Now, as always, allow me to introduce my panelists. We're expecting 4 panelists, but 2 are in studio so far. Angel Mbuthia, Chairperson, Jubilee Youth League. It's always good to have you in studio. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
Joining Angel is Vincent Olengo, a political enthusiast. Happy New Year and welcome to TV47 as well.
Happy New Year, thank you.
We expect a couple more panelists to be joining us, and we'll continue with that as they come. But Angel and Vincent, this entire week we've been talking about is education on this panel. And every discussion has been an issue to do with education this, education that. Basically because it was a back to school week, plus the KCSE 2023 results came out. JSS teachers went on strike. So there's so much to talk about in education, but I'd like to pick your brains, especially on this issue to do with the performance witnessed in the KCSE 2023, the results that were released, because this definitely forms a very large chunk of the people you represent on this panel. We saw that out of 900,000 candidates who sat for that exam, only 200,000 met the mark for university, 600,000 plus candidates were in the bottom half, meaning that most of them actually failed. And that exam came out with over close to 50,000 getting E's. And what comes to mind? What is your assessment of that process, especially the evaluation process that we had? Angel.
Thank you, Fred, and good morning, Kenya. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the class of 2023 for, braving through the storm, since they are the class of 2019, and 2019 is when we had the COVID-19 pandemic, just gearing towards that. And so what they've done, braving it through that, is something to congratulate them for. However, when I look at the results, I would think that an education expert would tell you that what you need to see is a normal curve in every exam outcome, that you need to have a certain number on the left, on the right, and then the huge chunk coming in the middle. But now what we've seen in this, in the results of 2023 is like the presidential election results in Kenya. I think when you look at most of them not being able to meet the average score, and they had even already redetermined or reestablished how the results will be calculated. You don't need, the compulsory subjects are not the same anymore. So you either pick English or Kiswahili. So we expected to see a bit more of an improvement based on that. But still, that was really shocking to see. But then we need to also evaluate why so many of them also got the grade E. I think that's a grade that when you don't even go to class, you can still get. But about 48,000 of them got E's, and that's something that's very worrying. And that's where we need to also think through and see what are we doing in our education system? What do we need to revise? Is it the infrastructure? Is it the mentorship? Because we also saw cases of teenage pregnancies across through the years. How is it that some of them do not even make it to sit the exam? I think there's a lot more that we need to review as a nation in our education system, because that is what we take pride in. Our human capital, our workforce is based on our education system. So since we rolled out the free primary education in 2002, we have made great strides. But for me, as a youth leader in Jubilee, I think the governance of this country is going south. I think how we are managing I was about to say elections, how we are managing our education system, yes. Our results, the KCP, the KCSE, we don't even know whether students are even sitting the same exams. We are getting students placed in schools where they did not even apply for, or a girl is placed into a boys' school. We are getting students getting the wrong marks. So there's a lot to do with the management and the governance of this country that I see going wrong.
Yes, and there's a lot of disillusionment, Vincent, among the youth. Even those who've been able to go through university and graduate after years of hard work, many of them are still not able to get jobs. But now you look at the education system we have, and it's producing more failures than successes, and you wonder, really, is it the right system for Kenyan youth? Don't you think that if we continue like this, it would just exacerbate the disillusionment of Kenyan youth? 48,000 of them got E's. What happens to them, Vincent?
I think it's something that is so worrying. And if you look at the system, also the transition we had during the COVID, and then having now CBC coming in and where we have reached, I'd say that even if you look at the performance in itself, leave alone even the E students, it's so worrying that you would get a whole school having the biggest number with the D grade. Then you look at it and you ask yourself, what next for them? Because you see, we are in a country whereby talent in most cases don't count. So most people look at education as something not only as an equalizer, but something that defines the success. So when basically the system does not really give them what they expect, it becomes a big challenge. The same thing you're saying, that even after graduation, like from the university or colleges, you still find that there are no jobs or so many people are out of employment. You realize that even if you want to advise this person, please go for something like now an hands-on or go for technical, like vocational centers or even the colleges, you realize that this person would be asking themselves, what next even after that? Because they'll be looking at themselves as failures. So to me, I think it is high time that both citizens and even the government take education so serious, because it is not only an equalizer, but as a fact in Kenya, education is one thing that defines our next step.
Okay.
Yep.
Allow me to introduce into the panel Kijana Stephen Derry, political analyst and politician. Happy New Year. Karibu sana TV47.
Asante sana. It's a great thing. It feels nice being here.
Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Also joining us is John Mukoya, National Youth Leader, ODM. It's a pleasure having you, sir, in studio. Happy New Year na karibu sana.
Happy New Year to you.
Yes, you found us discussing matters education because it has been the biggest discussion this whole week in our country with the release of the KCSE 2023 results. Back to school, of course, we do expect on Monday Form 1s will be joining their new schools as well. And so many questions have arisen, especially in the handling of the KCSE and the KCPE. Remember the drama that we saw last year when the KCPE results were released. Now, this week we've seen the KCSE results released, and we're just evaluating the kind of outcome we see and what kind of system we're looking at. And the biggest concern has been that the majority of those people who went through this system and through the evaluation came out being considered as failures. Because out of 900,000 candidates, 600,000 were in the bottom half, meaning that they failed. And that is a system that's supposed to be producing the next generation of leaders, the next generation of the workforce for this country. And Steve Nderi, do you think that this system appears designed more as a death sentence for a majority of Kenyan youth?
Well, I feel, I have a similar feeling. First of all, I feel it's like the system or the administration has decided that it's time to kill 844 and kill it in style. I feel that they want to, just invalidate the whole system so that as they push the CBC agenda, which of course has met a lot of opposition from teachers, from parents, I really don't know what public participation was done, because there is a lot of, feeling that it was not it. It didn't come at the right time. It wasn't done in the right way. So if you look at how they brought the KCPE, it was pure shambles. I found Angel saying it was literally similar to how elections have been done before, because you would find that, kids who didn't do sign language had such marks. So I didn't get where the hurry to release such results was coming from, because, you want to release results in a few weeks, and there has never been such incompetence in the history of Kenyan exam results. So I feel like there is a designed move by the government to really invalidate the KCPE and KCSE as they introduce whichever next phase that they want to do. And that is so wrong, because it's at the expense of hundreds of thousands of young people who had dreams. There are young people who desire to be pilots, to be doctors, to be great things. And that they have not been denied these marks because they didn't study or they didn't do well, but because maybe there was a plot, or there was system hitches, or there was incompetence in the marking and the results transmission. Because I have never seen in my whole life where we have provisional results for exams. In exams, it's either you have 90. Yeah, it's either you have
struggling to
yeah, it's either you have 50 or 50. There is no way that now you've scored 50. You know, the answer may change, and now you have 60. That is not
and
right.
It's a very interesting idea you brought up. That probably it's designed to signal the death of 844, but then again, it means that all the 600,000 plus are simply collateral damage.
Yes.
But John, looking at this, and I've seen that debate on social media, people trying to encourage people who have failed in KCSE and telling them, for example, that tweet by Larry Madowo, a celebrated journalist, that I failed in KCSE, but don't worry, I've actually flown to 45 countries in the last 1 year or so. It may seem nice saying that, but this system has told people you've already failed. 48,000 of you have an E. Do you think that kind of debate that even if you fail, you will still succeed, holds water?
That debate is crap. And I'll say that the system we have right now, we first of all start with an incompetent Minister of Education. That whatever is happening in this country today, when you talk about the system has designed it, remember you're not designing it for failure now. Those students that you have made them fail today, even if it was by design or they fail, remember this is a generation that you are now killing at the moment. That those ones that have been told have failed, it's another population that's going to be out there without going to any college because already you have demoralized them. Even if you wanted to say that let us have this discussion, like Larry saying that I failed, but the failure of Larry then is not the failure of these children today. And that discussion is old. We better stop it because the children we are having today or the students we have today are not the students we had those years. And even if Larry failed that year, remember there was another system that he has gone through until this particular time. You cannot compare, like a student who has failed in class 8 cannot go back to school because we are having a new system with the CBC. This one already failed. You have already crucified, as you have said, a death sentence to this student that already you have already failed. So to me, that discussion is not here, is neither here or there. That discussion has to stop, and the system has to look at the future they are now killing of the young people.
Yet we still have to contend with the KCSE and this ranking system for at least the next 4 years because the first cohort of CBC is only in grade 8. They're nowhere near the high school. They still have 2 more years before they get to high school. So we still have 3 more classes. I think, is it 3 or 4 classes that have to go through the 844 KCSE system. Angel, do you think that this grading system of schools, because a lot has been said about the alliances, the Mangu Highs, and all these schools that have traditionally excelled very well, and everyone wants to join them, and the kind of resources that go towards that direction. And everyone, it would appear the entire system is skewed towards celebrating a few schools and ranking them. And that has been described over the years as part of the problem. Do you think that probably we should, if at all it is by design that we are getting rid of 844, that we should slow down on the ranking system?
Well, Fred, first of all, I want to empathize with those who felt that they didn't do well in KCSE, and what Larry is saying is quite contrary to what you'd expect in the long run, because when you have talent and skills and these other things all play into what you become in life. But when you are having that conversation with my colleagues here, I was thinking about myself as a young woman just finished Form 4. I was lucky enough, I met the cutoff to join the university. But then I imagine myself if I did not make it to the cutoff. Then that means, let's say I got an E, it means that I have to do odd jobs to maybe supplement a few things in there, especially coming from a humble background. Because now that means that I might not really afford to go to the best TVETs or anything of that kind. And they were not even quite there when I was doing my KCSE. So that means I maybe meet a guy, get some 5 children. Already now that my future, my career, even if I want to become a journalist like Larry, that becomes a very big dream into the future. And even these 5 children I have, even bringing them up will become a difficult scenario altogether. And then that will subject me to a lot of difficulties in life, obstacle after obstacle, compared to the me who was able to join university, take her 4 years in the university, work a little bit, pay for masters, get her masters done, do other things, come on TV, talk to Fred about the state of the nation. Those are two different people just because of a grade that they scored. And when you look at 600,000 people who've not done well, maybe 100 will become millionaires or will become excellent in their careers. What happens to the other? Because there are those outliers and they happen. There are people who have very emotional or high intelligence skills that they do very well in the streets of life. But that is not the same for everybody. Others also need to go into teaching, do all these other things. But what we've done over the years as ranking schools here and there, it's been okay, it's been good, it's yielded what we have today because Kenya has one of the best workforces in the world. And that has really gone into motivating us, making us very hardworking, determined, diligent people. That's our image globally. So our education system is the one that we have to give credit to that. But then again, we have to appreciate that times are changing. We're in the 21st century. We have AI. We have technology. We have Zoom platforms. We virtually connect and work from wherever you are and report to someone on the other side of the globe. Those are different things that have come up. So that thinking of maybe redefining our education system comes at a very crucial time.
Oh yes, and we're exactly talking about that, re-looking at our curriculum and the introduction of the CBC. And I can see all of you went through the 844 system, at least, if at all you went through the Kenyan system. Now we're looking at CBC, and they say it is the remedy to some of the issues we're talking about, that this issue of ranking, this kind of exam-oriented evaluation, we're doing away with it. But do you see, is that the feeling you're getting? Are you confident enough that they will stick to that plan? 844, when it started 40 years ago, had really good ideas. And if at all you joined 844 in the earlier years, the kind of learning or the learning areas were much broader. Over the years, everything changed. When you look at CBC and the kind of implementation we are seeing so far, do you get the feeling that they will stick to that plan?
If we get quacks or those who don't really value, if we keep getting those who don't really value education, then we are not going to have the system work as it should work. Let me take you back just a little bit. In the most recent years, we had exams, results were being released after quite some time. So they could take time to look at it, the marking could take time. Of course, we still had issues, a few issues about exam regularities. Then we had Matiang'i come in, and later Magoha. They were looking at it in a way that we need to now kind of have results come a bit earlier. One of the main reasons is that they wanted to ensure there was no cheating. The other reason, they were looking at it as, in a way that we need to have some of these people join the institutions as early as possible. And you look at it in a way that they designed it in a way that even in as much as it was being done that fast, they had the system working. But then we now have a government in place and we have a minister in place, the cabinet secretary, who is trying to also fit in, trying to make results also out fast, the same way we had the other people make it, but then not looking at this thing or putting a system in place just to ensure that the results when they're coming out, first thing is how the marking was done. The second thing is how the transmission is done. And then looking at it that what next for the students would come in. So looking at just what has happened and then looking at the CBC with this so much interesting things in it, it is so promising. But then if we don't get the good people to implement it, we are going to have the worst system ever.
Okay, hold that thought, and we're taking a break. When we come back, we'll continue looking at the efficacy of the CBC curriculum and whether or not it's really viable in our situation. Remember, it is a very cost-effective curriculum, and already the government is struggling. Also, we'll look at our other models of funding that are very popular, especially among politicians, the bursaries and the CDF, and we'll see if at all it's really helping Kenyan youth. We'll talk about politics later on, because politics is still important. You're watching Morning Cafe, the youth perspective on the state of the nation. Don't go too far. On TV47 with me, Fred Indimuli, and I'm looking at our X account, and Gabriel Wakasiaka says the kind of direction we are heading as a country is dire. We need leaders who can see 50 years ahead and tell people the truth, no matter political consequences. I have nothing to celebrate today but cry. That's Gabriel Wakasiaka. I'm still in studio with Angel Mbuthia, chairperson, Jubilee Youth League, Vincent Olengo, political enthusiast, Kijana Stephen Derry, political analyst and politician, and John Mukoya, national youth leader, ODM. We continue focusing on matters education because this is key to the youth, and this is where we produce the country's workforce. This is a kind of thing that affects the very formative years of Kenyan youth. And now focusing on the CBC, because a lot has been said. As we speak, 20,000 teachers who had been hired as interns to teach in junior secondary schools have downed their tools beginning this week. It will mostly affect public schools. Those who have money will take their children to private schools. Hence, we're looking at the implementation of CBC and the funding issue, because it is a cost-intensive curriculum. And questions are being asked, even as we cross over and we transition from the 844 system to the CBC, whether or not we're actually doing it the right way. Remember, there's already a cohort that's in JSS. They've already done 1 year. They're in the second year. At the end of the third year, they're supposed to have already identified their pathways. Are they following sciences or the arts? And by then, they should even be able to identify which schools to go to. If you have any relative in CBC or JSS for that matter, do you think they're actually ready to identify their pathways? Hence, we can talk about the hope to actually transition from this examination-oriented 844 to one that is focused on the skill set of an individual. Stevie.
Well, first of all, I must say that I'm very disappointed with how the implementation and the transition to CBC has happened. Even before I proceed, I have to say that I do not agree with the whole idea of CBC as a curriculum. We have had so many transitions. We have had about 2 or 3 before in terms of curriculum or system changes. And I thought that the government had learned enough. I don't know what those strategic plans and researches usually give them, or what they learn from them. I don't think they learn from their previous mistakes or previous implementation styles, because what we needed was not really a change of style from 844 to 633 something. What we needed was a change in the system of teaching, or what we call the pedagogy of it, so that we could just look at, are we teaching or delivering this content in the right way? Is the content we are delivering to the student, giving the student the right skills for the job market ahead? And that alone would have fixed this problem. Where we are having transition changes is that this change required the construction of new classes, which of course, required a lot of money, number one. This system introduced newer classes. These newer classes, they need teachers. And then these teachers need training for the kind of education they are going to give. Recently, I have seen teachers complaining that there has been a revision of the subjects, where you may find home science is combined with another subject, agriculture is combined maybe with music. I don't know how they are combining those subjects, but you find that a teacher who went to school, studied how to teach agriculture, is having probably to teach business or something else. So you are really putting these kids in a danger of being taught by someone who honestly says, I didn't study for this, I don't know how to deliver this. And once she or he delivers to the student, they are going to deliver something in the wrong way. So I don't think we are actually keen on delivering the right skill set for these children. And I think these children are not ready. I don't know if you have a relative or a child and you just speak to them, especially if they are old enough to have seen how the previous system was, you find that they are so uncomfortable with this system. And then the other concern that I have that is very key is that where we have doctors today, where we have lawyers and people who did certain higher level courses like medicine was because there was a merit-based system. We cannot really assume or pretend that we are going to have an education system that is not merit-based, because it is out of merit that we are able to understand someone's best areas. So if you're not going to grade me in terms of how best I did in a certain subject, then how are you going to know if I'm best as a doctor, as a lawyer, And that's where we go to the clusters. When we go to universities, we just don't go to do a course simply because you scored an A. I may have scored an A, but maybe in a certain cluster that would take me to medicine, I would score lower. But maybe if I was to do law, I scored well. So that tells you that this system wasn't designed so badly. And I don't really support the efforts that I'm seeing to discredit it. I think there is still time to review, yes.
Oh, well, we've crossed the bridge, unfortunately. The train has already left the station.
Yeah.
Now, the other concern I have, John, with the CBC has a lot to do with money in different areas. And it would appear that wealth has a way of indirectly or directly influencing the kind of education, quality of education that you receive in this country. As we look at it, the problems we are seeing even on the front page of the Daily Nation, junior secondary in trouble again, it's issues to do with money, staffing, syllabus, and other issues. But you see, a lot of these problems will affect the public primary schools. Those people with money will simply take their children to private schools that have already hired teachers, they already have laboratories, and they're already proceeding with this education, one way or another. Education, they say, is supposed to be an equalizer to ensure that even those from a lower background are brought to a level playing field with the rest of the children. But we are seeing as if the new system is worsening the situation. Don't you think that that is a bigger problem? Years to come will have widened the gap between the haves and the have-nots through our education system.
My brother Indimuli, that is where we are heading. And I really wonder, when the president came in power and entrusted his presidential working force, something of the sort, to look into the education, I do not understand actually what information they gave him. Because when you look at the system we are having right now, as you just say, that it is so much cost effective. Not both, despite the fact you are in public school, even those public schools, parents who are on the poor background are not able also to even sustain the little you might think that are in public schools. Yesterday, I'm sorry to say, I went to Rockfield School, that you find a pupil of grade 4 is paying around 80,000. That's a pupil of grade 4. Now, the gap that is being widened by this system we are having right now is that a generation is being killed. Just the same way the generation has been killed in class 8 and Form 4. That we are having students, you ask them today, even those ones who are in CBC, which number were you? They do not know. They do not know even which number they were. They are just they have been put in a place, they are just in a system that let's go to school, we are having a CBC. But look at this way. Class 8 has exited. We are now having, we have the CBC. Those who are in CBC, they are now going to go to that senior
grade
secondary.
8, yes.
Grade 8, and then they move to that, we have grade 9 and whatever. Are we prepared that when these ones are getting out, they are going to go to senior secondary? What are they going to be learning there? At the moment, we don't have even teachers. We don't have teachers right now in primary. Are we having teachers in secondary? That when they leave the junior secondary, they are going to find teachers in senior secondary. Where we are heading in Dimuli, we are heading to a crisis that we are not going to get out of it. And someone is determined to kill a generation. My problem is just a generation that we are going to have after this system. And we beg that the system or the government has to look into whatever CBC style that is being carried out in this country at the moment.
Okay. Let's now examine the funding model for our education. And we come back to this issue of capitation, which is a big debate. And as it is in high schools, there's, the government gives about 22,000 per learner as capitation. Schools are saying times have changed, that capitation should go up to about 30,000 per student. The government is struggling and has said even that 22,000, leave alone the 30,000, even the 22,000 we won't be able to do it. So we'll give you probably 16 or 15,000 shillings. But you're seeing politicians, on the other hand, come out and demand for CDF, of which their biggest justification is that schools are opening and we have to dish out bursaries. Now, hence the debate for bursaries. And there's been this discussion online, and many people argue that why are we giving politicians money for education? If at all the government is struggling, why don't you bring back the money, consolidate it, and use it as direct capitation? Is it a justifiable proposal, or do you think that the CDF route, where politicians dish out bursary checks, is a way to go, Angel?
Fred, I don't know how to take out the politics in our education system, because when you say even the government is struggling, I wonder, because during the campaign period, Musalia Mudavadi said that once they get into power, they will scrap out CBC, and they were very, very clear about that. They tweeted and spoke about that just before the election. But then what we saw Mr. Ruto do is roll out an education task force that was going to review the CBC. They went ahead to spend over 200 million worth of a budget to review the CBC system and make recommendations that were now going to give them the go-ahead with CBC. So when we say that we are struggling with our education system, I wonder. When I see Mr. Ruto stand on top of a car and say that he wants the housing levy and the judiciary should step aside, I wonder, really, what do you mean by a housing levy? Are we struggling with housing as much as we're struggling with education as a country? Because education is not an expenditure for this country, it is an investment. One of our West African countries, Ghana, they have a housing levy, but for education. It is called a GET fund. It is a percentage that you pay even in a restaurant. When you buy coffee, tea, lunch, after VAT, you get a 5 or 2% that is deducted from that to go and pay for education. Ghana's education system is funded by the people. And what they do, they even have scholarships for students going for masters. Kenya does not have a system that supports students going for masters. But we have not structured our funding system in a way that responds to the needs of our people. When we talk about politics and MPs needing money to disperse bursaries, then you see the need for the people. I see we have very misplaced priorities. As a beneficiary of the public education system in this country, where in the university, in the best university in the country, the University of Nairobi, I was paying 40,000 per year to study my bachelor's at the university. But now I can imagine that one is a dream far-fetched for anybody joining the university today. And I think that's because we are misplacing our priorities. We are demolishing buildings across the country and say we want to put up affordable housing projects. But I think the housings that we should be building and putting together should be in our minds. Okay. That is the investment that we should be looking into.
Vincent, what is your assessment of the funding model for education?
It is something that is soaring, my brother Fred. Because, you know, in this country, in many occasions, you'll always find our MPs or the legislators always differ in opinions. But you realize that CDF is one thing that has really united them. That tells you what really is required on the ground. So whether you are on Kenya Kwanza, whether you're on Azimio, your electorates needs their children in school. And of course, there are so many people who suffer who also need to use the CDF. Of course, when the schools talk about the money being raised from 22 to 30,000, it is something that is making sense, because you realize that everything has gone up. The price of everything has gone up. And therefore, if you are still to maintain the 22,000 per student, that means by the time you are done with paying for whatever you are supposed to pay for as a school, you will still be in debts. And so the schools will not really run as they're supposed to be. So I think that this is something that should really be looked into. And I thought, now that the president had put up a task force to look at the CBC, I was quite sure and thought in my own opinion then that maybe when giving reviews on the CBC, they would also advise on how to transition from the current 844 to now the CBC. But then it looks like maybe whatever they presented and what maybe they got on the ground is different. Or maybe the person implementing or those in office implementing whatever they presented are really doing the opposite of what should be done. So it is something worrying, and I can really tell you that if people struggle to pay for a basic education, try thinking of it as my good sister says, now what of now the universities? Because it then means if completely you don't have money, that means you won't really study. And if you don't go to school, then that means your future is not shaped. Yeah, and when we really insist on building other things, we give other things priority, when in real sense, because if you are really empowered and you have the skills, you've gone to school and maybe you've managed either to secure a job or you've through the skills you have, you've gotten self-employed, you'll be in a position to build yourself a good house. Okay. So I really think we should prioritize education over whatever the government is prioritizing right now.
Okay. Stevie, going back to the year 2000 and Mwai Kibaki came in, 2002, 2003, his promise was free primary education. And the basic argument is when you make it free, every child will have access. Education is part of those rights guaranteed by the Constitution, Article 53 of the Constitution. And free primary came up. 10 years later, Jubilee administration came in and they came with a promise of free secondary education, hence this capitation per student. Now we are seeing a sort of a reversal or regression from that promise. The burden obviously will fall on the parents.
Yes.
And the parents were already burdened by other issues over taxation and so many, a myriad of issues affecting Kenyans generally. Do you think that this could exacerbate the kind of disillusionment in Kenyan youth if your parent is unable to fund properly your secondary education? It could contribute to other issues as well in the coming years.
Yeah, I think we are preparing our generation for very tough future. And I have been analyzing it, and I feel that it goes down to the priorities of this government. And that is why I say that everything is by design. When CBC came, and I will analyze it wholesomely, there were some quarters, myself included, who felt that there was a way that the government, not just this administration, but the government, even in the previous administration, wanted to make sure that they discourage, students or kids from going to university. And why? We have young people right now who are aware of their rights, who are aware of structures of governance, who are aware of how things should be done right. So this model was supposed to change our young people from intellectual thinkers and critical thinkers to workers, because that is why the CBC is so much geared on the practical part. If you look at the funding model right now, trust me, if your son or your daughter was going to a TVET, there is a very proper funding model. They're being given money to pay for school. They're also being given money for their pocket money, just like it was in the HELB. But now it's a better funding model for TVETs. That tells you that it is a government policy by this administration to encourage kids to go to TVETs, of which I think it's a good idea. But then at the same time, we are discouraging these kids from going to universities. There are kids who want to go and do courses in universities. And then we're also making it very expensive at high school level when we defund the tuition fees that are paid by government via the capitation. So I feel that the whole design where they want to encourage kids to study to be workers and not critical thinkers, I think I find it to be a whole colonial or neo-colonial agenda where we will have a future of young people who are just workers. All they know is welding or whatever course they did at the TVET, but they do not have the critical thinking part of it, which also demobilizes them or disenfranchises them as better voters or as better participants to the national discourse and how they are governed. And so I feel that while trying to do that, because I feel that is the government agenda for the future, we are also making young kids from humble backgrounds whose parents maybe can't pay for education. You find now per year, there are schools that are now paying 80,000 in extra county level. And maybe the parent who can't afford there has to take that kid to a day school. So we are really jeopardizing futures of young kids by thinking that we are revising old policies in the name of maybe it's not practicable anymore because maybe when we fund schools, we lack money to grow the economy and all that kind of thing. And we think that we are wasting money. The idea that we are wasting money on academics or on education is a very wrong idea, because I don't know, we are finding money to renovate State House. Out of nowhere now State House needs to be renovated. It has been there for years. Out of nowhere we are able to finance international travel for politicians. They're always going around. If at all we are defunding education in the name of austerity and wanting to reduce on how much we spend so that we can pay debts, why are we not serious on austerity measures on government officials? Why are we not serious on cutting down spending? I want to agree with my colleagues here that if there is an area that deserves spending, I mean, the money that was released recently was just about 40 billion. We would rather double that to education to ensure that every kid accesses education. And as you said, it's in the Constitution, it's in the International Declaration of Human Rights. Every kid has a right to access education, and not just education, quality education.
Yes, and John, looking at this and the state of affairs in our education system, one gets the feeling that we've left education to the whims of politicians, that you can reverse even serious policy decisions like free secondary education. And now we've left it dependent on whichever administration comes in, that a new government comes into place and they decide free secondary education is no longer a priority, yet people are enjoying it, then they reverse it to some extent. Right now, if you look at it, it's no longer free secondary education. It's probably a system which is to some extent government subsidized. Do you feel the need that we need to protect education from this kind of movements driven by the winds of change in the political setup?
I want to agree with you, Indumuli, that the only problem we are having in this country at the moment is that we don't have a parliament. That the parliament we have agrees on anything, as long as it's from State House. Like policies will always change until this regime and the current parliament goes away. Because these are not parliamentarians who can stand for anything. Like right now, they're crying about CDF. But when things are being done in parliament, where laws should be implemented and those policies should be formed, they are seated there and ensuring that these things go through. But now when CDF come, they're joining each other's hands, be it in Azimio, be it in UDA. They now want to cry for the CDF. This is a government, and especially when I talk about talking about Mheshimiwa William Ruto, he's the one determined, like when he's not traveling internationally, he's traveling locally. Even this facelifting of State House, it is not being facelifted. William Ruto likes traveling, and he wants to travel across the country now locally, enjoying all the local State Houses. So that is also spending the money. You have talked about we are struggling. We are not struggling. The struggling only comes in because of the UDA government that has come in place today. We have had Uhuru Kenyatta for the last 10 years. We never struggled. We had a manifesto as Azimio, because I'm in Azimio and I'm in ODM, that we are going to have free primary education, we are going to have free secondary education, and we had actually in our manifesto that we shall have free university education. Now, where were we going to get the money? The money was actually going to come out from the same country that we are being told today we are struggling. We are only just having a government that does not care about the future. A government that today, when William Ruto is standing in Nyahururu on rooftops talking about housing levy, and then he doesn't find people, that one tells you that those people in Nyahururu expected him to talk about their school fees because they were having children that were going to school on Monday. But now there's someone here talking about housing levy and about houses when someone is having a house. I'd rather sleep hungry, I would rather eat food and other than have a house. We have so many street children sleeping on the streets in Nairobi. They don't stay in any house, but they're on those streets. I'd rather have funding for the students to go to school other than have a house that I cannot even afford or I cannot even buy. The priorities of this government are misplaced, and that's why we are going to continue struggling, be it in education. This is only education. We do not know another sector that they're now going to head, but I want to promise them, and I want to say it here on this TV, that whatever they're doing, this government is doing today, to these children, to these students, and to these university students also. These same students can bring this government down, and they should be very careful, because in the long run, when these students will fail to pay this school fees, and they will be sitting at home, and you are coming to them telling them about housing levy and how to construct housing, they're not going to allow you. This is a country that is run by the Constitution, and education is a right for these students, is a right for these people. But our government has misplaced priorities, and they are going to continue that way for the next 5 years, if they're going to survive in these 5 years.
And you brought up an issue about Parliament and its role in all this discussion. And there are various institutions that should be able to stand up and call out the government. And we are seeing less and less of that. Even, you've mentioned Parliament, even the opposition. We've not had any voice calling out the government as far as education issues are concerned. When you see that a whole education system is churning out more failures and successes, that is something that should call for national dialogue or for national reawakening of some sort. Angel, everyone is quiet. Not Azimio, not your party. Everyone is quiet on this issue.
Maybe, Fred, I could answer that. When you say that everybody is quiet, I wonder. The other day when my party leader, Raila Amolo Odinga, was in Mombasa, he gave a statement concerning this education. I think that is how far he could do by that time. But going forward, but already that statement is there. He has talked about you are having the CBC minus the teachers. He has talked about these teachers who have resigned, I don't know, resigned or they have just left to work. And, you know, nobody wants to associate itself with the education system we are having because of this regime. So we have talked in the Muli, and be fair to us.
Fred, I think revolutions in the education system are quite wanting. Number one, the first people I would expect to speak about education issues are student leaders. But what have we seen over the time? We've seen legislations being passed to muzzle student leaders from speaking, and student leaders are at the mercies of the administrations in their universities. So we are not even seeing the awakening of student movements across the country because of the state of the nation. Secondly, the others are politicians, the elected leaders, and on the front page of the Daily Nation, I can see that Ruto met Jubilee MCAs, and these are the people we have entrusted to speak about education issues. They went there, of more than 100 ward representatives. These are the oversight institutions in our counties. These are the members who sit in there. And they were given 50,000 shillings each. And
Angel, before even you accuse the MCs,
Fred,
you are the chairperson of Jubilee Youth League.
They are the ones.
And I've not seen Jubilee come out and say anything officially when it comes to the youth of Kenya. The KCPE that you described as an evaluation of shambolic. KCSE has come out and there's more drama. And parties like the Jubilee Party, which was a big party.
When we were having the SG Kioni and the rest of the Azimio team doing the NADCO report, one of the major outcomes of that was for Ruto to keep off political parties. As you know that right now the Jubilee Party is in court, and there are few restrictions about what can be said and what cannot be said. And that is why I'm here this morning to talk about the education system, because where we're headed as a nation, we cannot continue keeping quiet. And when I see elected officials going to meet Ruto and take a token and say now they're going to do A, B, C, and D, that is just political prostitution. When I expect these elected officials to be able to speak for me and on my behalf and on my colleagues and on the members of my generation, then I know I have no hope. I am not an elected official. I don't sit in the National Assembly. I don't sit in the County Assembly. But there's nobody to speak for me. When I see people who are going to meet Ruto and talking about that they are the owners of Jubilee, then I beg to wonder, because elected members in a party they can hop anywhere. What we've seen as a country is that you get elected today, tomorrow you've changed your political party. And we want to ask ourselves, what is our value system in this nation? When we're elected with Jubilee and when we go into parliament and we're elected, then we change our stand. What does that mean for us as a nation? What are we saying to the people of Kenya? That yes, you give me this ticket, but when I get there, I shift loyalties. But what I'm seeing here is a thing to want, because Parliament and our institutions are under siege by Ruto, and
the
once
conduct of
oversight
parliament, I
is not
think,
there.
the conduct of parliament, I think we've already decided is wanting. It is these other institutions that I'm worried about. Are they all following suit? That is everyone just sitting back and saying, okay, fine, Ruto or the Kenya Kwanza administration has decided to take this route. We don't like it, but there's nothing we can do. Vincent.
Let me, on a very neutral ground, without leaning on any side, I'd say that on all these institutions, we have people who have their own intentions. So today, for example, let's first of all talk of politics. If you look at all the parties, you realize that most of these elected members, they play to the tune of the party leaders. So it means if the party leader takes the right direction, they'll follow that. If it is on the left, they'll follow that. And most of them are kind of saying yes to everything. So it means if a party leader on their own thinking goes on the wrong direction when it comes to these critical issues, all the other people will support them without having their own reasons, because you need to think as a person. Of course, all these people are Kenyans. They are citizens, they have children, and these children or even their relatives are going through the same system as other people. And also, we have a government that kind of threatens every institution. So the moment an institution goes against them, this institution is not at peace at all. Because we have a government that thinks it is kind of a one-man show, not knowing that we are in a country that is a constitutionally democracy, a constitutional democracy country that should be governed by the rule of law, and that everybody should be governed with that law. So I believe that we have a good number of people who can really speak, but then they kind of think of the repercussions that would follow this.
Repercussions have always been there.
Yes.
And that's my concern. Yeah. Even with the agitation for multi-party democracy, there were repercussions for anyone who was pushing for that. Repercussions do exist, and yet we are seeing that more and more, many institutions are stepping back. Part of this could be attributed to that national dialogue that took place, that even the Azimio leadership said, let's slow down, give dialogue a chance, and we see what comes out of there. But how much of that NADCO report goes towards addressing the issues that are affecting the youth? For example, this issue that you're talking about, education. The class of 2023 KCSE, more than 2/3 are failures, and that's a fact. Who's going to reverse that?
Before he answers that, Brother Fred, there's one thing I wanted to add. If you look at the learning institutions, where most of the revolution was starting then, and should even start, we have administrations trying to fix at all cost whoever becomes a leader of these institutions. So at the end of the day, we have very weak leaders, people who cannot even speak, not even for themselves, leave alone students, people who think of, if I speak, I'll be expelled, if I speak, I'll be suspended. So it's true that repercussions have been there, and we need to stand up as youths and even student leaders and everybody else without looking at the repercussions and think of whatever we need at the end.
Okay, Stevie?
Yeah, so, I mean, first of all, this NADCO committee, which was led by my good friend, former VP, Kalonzo Musyoka and Ishungwa, in the issue of addressing youth concerns, first of all, there was no youth member in that committee. That shows you the position of young people in the decision-making tables of this country. And much as I blame them, because we are the people who vote for these people and we support them, so I mean, we give them the power to do as they would please. I don't think the NADCO report really addressed these issues in depth. There were areas of focus, and the key focus areas were majorly in the restructuring of government and creating extra positions, and all that was good. And personally, I have never really thought that the whole structure of government is the problem. The problem is how power is acquired and the process that guides the acquisition of power, because that is why we end up with the wrong leaders. I was very concerned when parents, thousands of parents petitioned to NEC for remarking. And those were, honest concerns. But you saw what happened in Parliament. The parliamentary committee that was, asking or inquiring from the NEC about the process actually validated the process and said this process was good, despite the glaring concerns that we saw. That tells you that these members of parliament who belong to political parties are all in agreement that we need to just approve what the government is doing, as you rightfully said, to give chance to dialogue. So that takes us back. What was the objective of this dialogue? Was it to solve the issues pertaining the people's needs and the plight of the people, or was it to solve the political interests of those who are spearheading? Yeah, to pacify, the heat that was among the politicians. And I am now really not convinced that the hope of Kenyans is either in the opposition or the government. Because first of all, we don't even have a functional opposition in this country. Even our constitution doesn't give room for opposition. We only have a majority and a minority. Our system of governance doesn't have an opposition. And I feel that the NADCO report may not solve our issues. What may solve our issues, and I think maybe we have 4 years more to go, is the people of Kenya deciding to vote in a way that is different. Because in our country, we were speaking about political parties. Why you're seeing this happening is because our political parties have no ideological orientation. Yeah, this is not like the Tories, the Labour, and the Conservatives. This is different. Now what we have are vehicles to acquire power and acquire positions. That is why you can enter today, and because it was just a vehicle to acquire power, then you can jump ship. Because there is no ideological orientation that took you to Jubilee or to ODM. It's only that you found that I am in Nyeri, I have to go to ODM so that I can be elected, and which personally have contested for political office, Senate and MP, and have never really gone to the major party simply because I want to get elected. I feel that if Kenyans can realize that by voting for a certain political party that is popular in our area, you don't automatically get the right leaders, that we need to vet further, and now we need to have less hope in our political parties until we really check on the independence of these parties. And I feel that unless we also respect the principle of separation of powers and all that tenets of democracy, where we can give the judiciary and parliament a free chance to counter-check the executive and counter-check each other, then we are going to have a problem. And I feel for the youth of this country, because their position and their plight is not really a key factor considered by the politicians at the top. And I think it's the high time, and I'm really appreciative that you've given us this chance. It's the high time that we young people realize that we need to organize ourselves differently without being agents of the interests of the politicians at the top.
Yet there's always the position of the alternative voice, especially politically, that even come 2027, people will choose one or the other. They will vote a certain way. But whoever emerges winner, there will be the need for an alternative voice beyond the systems in government or the institutions of government, and that's a political party, of which Azimio should actually be. You said rightly, John, that you represent that voice, the Azimio. But do you think that the NADCO report is being used to muzzle this alternative voice that Azimio should be representing, that it has been used to pacify and quieten the voices that should have come out and spoken loudly, probably in defense of the Kenyan youth?
I think the same voice that we have been in this country, that voice that has been speaking has always been Raila Amolo Odinga. Let's not go to so many words of this one and that. Now, Raila Amolo Odinga, who is my party leader, is that voice that will exit the scene soon. Now, which other voice is it coming out to actually contain a government that has bad manners, which William Ruto himself has bad manners? He just doesn't respect the Constitution itself, because I think when we were fighting for this Constitution, he was never with the Constitution. So he has nothing to respect about this Constitution. And that is why you will see him, that Parliament, which is supposed to actually check the success of the executive, is an extension of the State House. And I do dare say and repeat that Parliament is an extension of State House, because nothing that comes to that Parliament. Today, William Ruto is fighting the judiciary. Parliamentarians from his side have run to Parliament and are saying they're going to sponsor a bill to actually gag the judiciary. That one tells you that there's a problem. Because at the end of the day, after the judiciary has been gagged, who is next to be gagged? He has done it to the media, and you people slipped out because he tried it, he could not manage a bit. He's now managing Do
you think he's managed to also contain the alternative political voice?
I'm heading there. That today he has managed, he's now on the judiciary, and we talk about has he managed the opposition, which is actually Azimio as a whole. This is what is happening, that we gave time for that NADCO report to continue. It went through, and it has reached the place it is right now. We have come out, and you have seen my party leader said now he's going across the country to have a consultative meeting with Kenyans. That for sure, the things we wanted in that NADCO, one was the cost of living has to come down. Then two was that we have to restructure IBC. Then three was that William Ruto had to respect the political parties and stop gagging other political parties. And four was that actually, if you are elected on this particular party, you must remain in that particular party, and if you are not in that party, you have to resign. Those are some of the demands that we made. Some of them have gone through, some haven't gone through, and we are saying that we are going back there. And that's why you have heard Raila Amolo Odinga saying in the whole of December that, William Ruto, if you do not lower the cost of living, we are going back to the streets. And in Muli, we are ready to go back to those streets. When we went to the streets last time, and William Ruto massacred our youths, and I said, he massacred our youths. He did massacre our youths, not because they had done anything wrong, but they were demonstrating against his regime, which had put cost of living at a higher level. And we still say that if there's no alternative voice, as my brother was saying, that some of these members of parliament follow their party leader. These people have become so cheap, my brother. None of them is now following instructions from the party leader. They are following money. Whoever pays them more money, who is William Ruto, they will follow. Some of them do not believe in anything. And I do say that if you are elected on ODM or Jubilee, you must believe in what your party.
Mm-hmm. What I'm hearing from you, and because we have the chairperson Jubilee Youth League and the national youth leader ODM here, is that you also do not have enough confidence in the systems within your parties to stand up for the youth that you represent. Yes, you've talked about the party leader, Raila Odinga, and you say, yes, the party leader, the individual, Raila Odinga, is doing one or two things. But what about the party and the systems within that party? Because it would therefore mean that the youth must come out themselves and do something for themselves.
That's exactly where I was heading.
Yes, but she had raised an issue.
Yes.
And this is one issue I've heard over and over again.
Yes.
That they changed the legislation. Yes. And this muzzled student leaders.
Yes.
That's why student leaders cannot come out. That's why university students cannot do this or the other. During the agitation for multi-party democracy, students were not given an express open door policy that you can come out and go to the streets. Were they waiting for permission to do so this time around?
Fred, I think the context is different. The today of the issues that were there then are not the same issues that are coming up today. But then again, when you look at the lead up to the things that led into the 1992 multi-party democracy agitations, were quite prevalent. They kept on pushing and agitating. That was not the first time that the young people of that time really started agitating, because just 10 years before that, there was the coup attempt. So there were so many things that were going on around that time, very emotional issues. People were being assassinated and so on and so forth. Maybe that is not the exact context we have today.
The problems are not big enough right now.
Maybe right now, because we have elections every 5 years, and now that the only alternative we have is to just wait for the next election and see what happens. And that's why I think the Kenya Kwanza government is now even afraid of having things. When there are talks on a referendum, they get scared. When there are talks on reorganizing IEBC, they get scared, because you cannot even conduct by elections across the country. I mean, mean, and that would be one of the avenues to see exactly what Kenyans feel about the government they are in. And Kenyans have seemed to understand that as you make your bed, so you must lie on it. And they are uncomfortably in that bed with government, and they feel that they have no way to separate themselves until 2027. But I mean, what I have seen with Jubilee Party, we've been running programs across the country, revamping the party, engaging Kenyans and trying to understand exactly what the issues are and where the rain started beating us. And they agree that what they were told is now coming to pass. They were told mpango ni bottom up, they were told mpango ni kuweka pesa mfukoni, but what we are seeing now is that wanakuja kutoa hiyo pesa mfukoni. That was the opposite. So I think there's a lot of agitation going on underneath, and it's still under the carpet. Maybe, you know, we say that you cannot stop an idea whose time has come. When that idea comes for the young people of Kenya to say no to Mr. Ruto and his government, it is going to be business as usual. Yes.
Okay. Do you think that that's what is happening, that people are comfortably just suffering the pain, but feeling no urgent need to do anything at the moment?
Not really, but I think we have a big number of youths who are cowards. We have another big percentage of youths who are not interested in politics, not knowing that politics affect them directly. And then we have a big percentage of Kenyans, the biggest, that believe in mtu wetu. So if it's now Brother Fred who is up there and he comes from my ethnic group, then it means even if he's pressing us, it doesn't matter how much he's pressing us down, but then we'll have to support him because ni mtu wetu, in as much as we are suffering. So I really think that what is happening is just ignorance. And the fact that most people are not really willing to come out with the mentality that even if they come out, nothing will happen.
Wow. Stevie, do you agree that the powers that be, or that even the youth have been muzzled, that they cannot even come out to defend themselves? That the same way that institutions like Parliament and the opposition and everyone else is quiet, even the youth have been convinced that they better stay quiet for their own good?
Well, I am really disappointed in my generation right now, because they may not really have been gagged, because you can be gagged from speaking. And I think social media also wasn't the best thing, because when you guarantee the freedom of social media, I think revolutions are always possible in countries where social media is gagged. Because when you gag social media, the young people now look for another avenue to express their concerns. And that's why they go to the streets. And that's why revolutions become possible. But here, our young people are very courageous on Facebook and on Twitter. They will call the president all sorts of names. But when you call for mass action against or civil protest against wrong government policies, they don't really show up. Because first of all, our young people have really been indoctrinated with the notion that huwezi pigana na serikali, or you cannot fight against the government. And it's so stuck in the minds of the people. And as I told you, our education system is being fashioned and designed to entrench that, where we have a people that just believe that what the government does is right and we don't need to engage critical thinking. Mm-hmm. We are meant to work. Ours is to work in those housing projects as masons, as technicians, as plumbers. That is the whole design. So I feel that our young people, besides not having enough courage, they also are pathetic. You find that if you engage a young person and you tell them, Nyinyi, you voted for this party and therefore you have to, as Angel said, you made your bed, so you have to lie on it, then they start saying that I will not come out to vote next time, because even if I vote, I will not make any change. And that is where we have to tell them. I believe such shows also serve as civic education to these young people in the country. I want to tell them that your vote actually counts, but it counts when you vote it right, when you vet these leaders and discover that when you vote, it is actually a vote that determines how your life will look like. So I feel like our young people are not really gagged. They are just apathetic, and they are just, withdrawing from the governance structures, because maybe they're also not involved much by the political parties.
Blasé. They're just
yes,
there.
They're just there.
Comfortable.
Yeah, and also I feel that government really also found a way to catch them, because government realized that these young people are really unemployed, and so you find a lot of the distribution of lagis by government, by MPs, and that is why MPs, while pushing for capitation to be released, what they were really pushing for was bursary. You know, because not really bursary, but the CDF funds, because those funds give them an opportunity to go and perform cosmetic, football tournaments where young people are given some little money to manage them. And then when you just give this bursary and you give like 1,500 shillings for someone who needs to pay 30,000 in terms of fees, of course, that is just, it's just lagis which will not change their lives. Okay. So I think we need to tell that our young people, don't just take that 100 bob you take during elections or that 500 bob an elected politician will give you. Discover that you have a different role, you know, in shaping the future of this country and how it is managed. Final
remarks before I come to Bwana John.
Yeah, from myself, my final remarks to the young people of this country, I want to tell them that you need to understand that you deserve better. I have contested for elective office from 2017. I was the youngest Senate candidate in the country back then. I vied with a party called the New Democrats. And my experience engaging the young people has been that you have very nice policies, you speak and give us hope, but you do not have money. And we want those leaders who have money. And every cycle of elections, having vied twice, after 1 year, the same young people come and tell me, you know, come save us, speak for us, we are being oppressed. To our young people, it is time that you discover that how you vote affects how you live. It affects whether jobs are created for your sake. It affects whether you are going to be able to bring up your child well. And so I want to also say, having vied with the Wiper Party, I'm really considering going back to my party TND, which was really a youth party, and I have been engaging with the leadership of the party. We are going to be having nationwide rallies as the New Democrats Party, where we are going to start agitating for the rights of the people and bringing out that alternative voice that we've been speaking about today. And I want to encourage young people, especially young leaders, don't just say that you support the government, especially to student leaders. We have seen a transactional system of politics being introduced where young people will support a government just to get some cash. So let us know our worth and let us know we deserve better. Young people, let us shape our country and create a better one.
And you've just announced your defection from Wiper Party back to John, as you give your final comments, also give an assessment of Kenyan youth and how they've reacted to all this.
Actually, the Kenyan youth, most of them are where they are today. Most of them sat home and they were lied to, or that someone can sell chicken and become so rich and become a president. And that thing entered into their mind, and they thought everything was okay. Now, everything is not okay, our youth outside there. Remember that what you are being told about the housing levy and the construction of houses. I'll give an example in Demuli. I want Angel to go and carry a stone on the construction site. You are not taken to university, and your parent pays millions of money to come and do construction outside here. And I will tell the president that stop PR and stop lying to our young people, that these constructions you are doing today, they are not sustainable. And for how long are you going to construct these houses? And how many young people are going to own those houses that you are constructing today? Get the money, take it to education, have our future being taken care of. On the politicians outside there, I also want to tell them that they have to have a stand. That a stand today, all Kenyans are going to remember them for what they stood for when the regime was against Kenyans. So it is a time to stand for Kenyans and to ensure that Kenya is a better country. Okay. Lastly, I'll also tell the young people outside there that we have a movement called MDD, National Movement for Defense of Democracy. It is not for parties. It is for the young people who are interested to change and to ensure that democracy of this country has been taken care of by the regime that is existing. Let us join the movement and let us move together as one. It does not matter where you come from, but what matters is what is eating us as the young people. Okay. That is exactly where we are heading, and we must change this country. And William Ruto, where you are seated, take care, Mr. Ruto, that you might go home even before 2027 if you do not change how you are taking this country.
Interesting. Vincent, I'll give 45 seconds for a parting shot, just a parting shot.
Okay. I'll finish with these two things that are really disturbing me. One, the president keeps going across the country saying that the main aim of affordable housing is to create jobs. I'd wish to ask this question to the president. For how long are these houses going to be built? And once these houses are done, are these people who are part of, because the majority ni watu wa mjengo, are they now going to be jobless? Then lastly, I'd wish to tell the youths that in as much as you might think politics is not your thing, it is very important to take part actively, because at the end of the day, whoever becomes the president, whoever becomes on power, and the government of the day, whether you elected them or not, whether you took part or not, it affects you directly.
Okay. Thank you, Vincent. Finally, you get to wrap it up for us.
Yes, Fred, what I would say to young people in the country is to become members of a political party. Political parties are the realms that we use to get into leadership, into power, into government. That is where we can best make our decisions. Let's not be oblivious of the political issues in the country. And one thing I can tell you for free, Fred, is that if you'll not be in Jubilee Party in the coming elections, then you are not guaranteed of a seat where you are. Because how the ground is changing, how the thoughts and the minds of people are changing, are going into a certain direction, and we need to get together and be able to take back our country. Because as young people, what we've seen is that Ruto lies all the time, and all the time Ruto lies, and that is his nature.
Well, thank you so much, Angel Mbuthia. And I think we have three parties represented here. Jubilee Party, TND, formerly Wiper. You were in Wiper, now you're in TND.
Yeah, I was also formerly in TND. Just coming
and
back.
And ODM. Very briefly, because we
to join ODM, you dial star 483 star 036 hash.
Okay.
Kindly join ODM.
Vincent, yes. Vincent, you don't have a party?
Okay.
You belong to any political party?
I belong to ODM.
Oh, really?
Thank you so much, Vincent Olengo, political enthusiast, Angel Mbuthia, chairperson, Jubilee Youth League, Kijana Stephen Derry, political analyst and politician, and John Mukoya, national youth leader, ODM. Our panelists today, the youth perspective on state of the nation this Friday. Thank you so much for helping the Kenyan youth understand these issues. Let me go through this editorial comment as we come to the end of this session. Now, this week, another young Kenyan life was needlessly lost through suicide. The body of 27-year-old Vera Omondi Okoth was found dangling inside a bathroom at her parents' home in Umiru Village, Siaya County. It has been established that before the deceased took her own life, she had lost all hope of finding a job after she had unsuccessfully applied for more than 500 jobs. The deceased had in 2019 graduated with a bachelor's degree in science from the Masinde Muliro University. Now, Vera's story is not an isolated case, as similar tales of despair and hopelessness continue to emerge. Last year, a young doctor from Embu ended his life in a similar manner, driven to desperation by the lack of well-paying job opportunities, despite years of rigorous medical training. With limited job prospects, even highly educated individuals find themselves trapped in a cycle of unemployment, leading to frustration, depression, and tragically, in some cases, suicide. As a nation, there is a collective responsibility to address this crisis. It is not enough to merely acknowledge the problem. Decisive action is required to create an economic environment that can absorb the influx of young talent. Moreover, there is a need to redefine success beyond traditional white-collar employment, emphasizing alternative career paths, vocational training, and entrepreneurship can empower the youth to explore diverse opportunities. It is crucial to instill resilience and adaptability in the younger generation, helping them navigate challenges and uncertainties. The tragic loss of lives like that of Vera Omondi